Hey YouTube, I'm Caleb. I use he, they pronouns, and I had to split this video up into two parts because of how I was uploading onto YouTube. So if you missed the first part, it will be in the description below, but the second part is mostly just talking about, well, I'll include timestamps if you want to jump around, but I focus on my first hospitalization, so yeah, all right. But in the winter 2018 one, I did get my own room. But my room it wasn't until like I was there for a week that I realized that my room was like what is that called? Like isolation room. Like it's the room that like patients are sent to like calm them down. But I was placed there because they didn't know what sort of roommate to give me. Cause like I realized my friends that I made while I was there were like roomed together based off of gender, but like I was like gender queer and so they didn't know where to put me, so they put me in the individual room that was like at the end of the hallway. And that room like it didn't really have a window. Like the window looked like a prison cell window, and then there was a really tiny shower, really tiny bathroom. They provided me with like towels and soap and whatnot. And I had my friends like bring some of my clothes. Oh, and then there's like a day room that was split in half as like a kitchen eating area, and then a living room game area, and they had like bookshelves with very outdated old books. There was also another room that was like a game room, but it didn't have any games in it. It was more so like a conference room that had a piano in it. And then there were 2 or 3 breakout rooms, which were the rooms that you met with like your team every day or Monday through Friday. And as far as interactions with hospital staff and my team goes, I mostly interacted with the nurses because they're the ones who are there 24/7, and they are the ones who make sure you take your medication on time, make sure you like get your meals. If you have any questions, it's always like a nurse that you can go to. There were a lot of students at the location I was at because it was like a teaching hospital. So there would be like 2 or 3 hours at a time where like students would come in and just like interact with us. And they like seemed really eager, which like wasn't a bad thing, but it was still like okay, like I'm probably at like one of the worst moments in my life right now. I'm gonna need you to like go from here to here. Like it's just a lot. And we met with the doctors who, it didn't seem like they didn't want to be there, but their demeanor was just very professional and they felt very distant. Like I don't remember having like positive regards for them, but I remember them being just very like professional and like asking you, how's the medicine going? How does the food taste? How's the staff treating you? Like they just were very professional in everything that they did. And then I vaguely remember meeting with my social worker. I remember, also because this was the winter, it was closer to Christmas. So I think maybe the social worker was like overwhelmed because I think there's supposed to be 2 of them on the unit, but there was only 1, and there was like 12, 13, 14, 15 of us patients. And so I think she was overwhelmed in general. So whenever I did meet with her, she would just like hand me a big stack of like therapists that I could connect with to be treated like outside of my hospitalization. The social worker seemed stressed. The nurses were great, and the doctors were very professional, and students were like overeager. Then as far as meds, we took them in the morning at the same time every day. Usually like right before breakfast. Some people had to take it after breakfast. They weren't really that like, I think they should have been, but they weren't really that concerned with whether or not we like watching us take it, because some people like hide the pills under their mouth and then like spit it out. But they didn't like monitor that. But maybe it's just with me because I like took my medicine. They were very adamant that we like took the right medicine. So like our wristbands were always scanned, and then the medicine was scanned, and like they did that like 2-3 times before they handed you the pill and the water. And as far as food, I don't remember the food being that bad. It was hospital food, but it wasn't like awful hospital food. The only time that the food was terrible was like the first day I was there, because like you typically will like order your food the day before, and because the first day I didn't get the chance to like write out or you don't write it out, you just like circle what you want. They give you a menu and you circle it. So the first day I didn't have much choice with my food, so I think I got like a sandwich, like turkey cheese sandwich with milk and an apple. It was just very bland. The whole meal was very bland. And they had scheduled meal times and snack times for us that we like had to adhere to, because they would like take away the meal carts. So if you didn't eat your food, then you just like didn't have food. I'll talk about this later, but you have like visiting hours, and so like I had my friends bring me like food with flavor, because they're allowed to like bring you things. So I had my friends bring me food sometimes, because hospital food can only be eaten so much. Oh, an awkward thing, which might go into my one video that I plan to record about being trans in a psych ward, and my mostly complaints, if I'm being honest, about that. But one thing that I didn't appreciate was how they, whenever the meal cart would come, it'd be like a bunch of trays stacked or whatever, and on each tray was like a paper with like your name and like the menu showing like what you ordered. And the psych ward was kind of like community oriented as much as community it could be, so people would like pull the trays out and like say the person's name to give them their food, and everyone saw it as like people being kind to one another, but I felt so like anxious and like ashamed because like my birth name was on there, and so like I would either try and be the person who was like handing out food, even though I didn't really care to like read off these people's names and hand out all the trays, but I would just hurry up and try and like grab my tray or like stand by that person and be like, oh, that's me actually, so then they wouldn't say my birth name out loud. But it came to like day 4 or 5 that they like realized like what my birth name was, but I don't remember any of the patients actually being like problematic about it. They were just like, oh, okay, but you go by Caleb, cool. So as far as like how I spent my time there, if you haven't realized by now, everything was pretty much scheduled. So we also had scheduled group times, and in group it would be like a what is that called, CBT group, or pet therapy group, or art therapy group, or spirituality group. And you didn't have to always attend these groups, like they were by choice, because also I was on a voluntary hold. Like I signed a waiver saying like I want to admit myself into this. I'm pretty sure it's a different experience if it's a involuntary hold. So yeah, we had lots of groups, which were really helpful, but I say that as a extrovert who enjoys like socializing. And then they gave us free time, which I was mostly bored with, because I wasn't really that into art, but I got into art, and I like started like decorating ornaments. I started painting. I started just doing all the things I could do to spend my time, because they would like worry about you if you always like went back to your room, especially me, since I was like in an individual room, and the nurses would come and like talk to you and be like, hey, it'd be best if you were in the like, what is that room called? In the game room, or in the like, I want to call it playroom, but it's not called the playroom. I will, when it comes to me, I'll like put it there or something. We also had time to be on the phone and to like visit with our guests. So there's like visiting hours. So, but first with the phone, it was just like 2 patient phones, and I think like legally the nurses aren't allowed to like say, hey, this is like such and such hospital and this is the psych ward, who are you calling for? So the patients were the ones who picked up the phone, and like we'd just say hello, or they instructed us to just say hello, and then the person would ask for the patient, and then you would go see if that patient was there. And then I guess that bypassed the like legal side of things, because like the nurses technically weren't saying that you were there, it was like the patients. But I don't remember calling too many people. Like I called my dad and I called my friends, yeah, but I like would rather be texting, so I didn't really enjoy being on the phone. But with visiting hours, I think we have visiting hours during lunchtime from like noon to 3, and then visiting hours from like 6 to 9 or something like that, where friends would come and they would eat with us, like eat lunch or dinner with us, and they would talk with us. And not only just friends, I had my pastors come as well, because I like felt like being there made me feel like this is it, I failed, God hates me. So it was really encouraging to have my pastor be there and just like remind me that like I'm worthy and I'm valuable and all these good things. I also became friends with like the other patients, like friends, because I remember we because they were like college students, and they brought, I think it was Monopoly or Uno, one of the two. We played a lot of games, so many games, but I really enjoyed their company as well. At my location, we did not have any outside time. I know some psych wards have like a gated like play area, like a basketball court, or like a grassy area for you to like get fresh air, but we did not have that. We had windows in the day room, and those windows had bars on them, so it definitely felt like a prison. And as far as exercise goes, if you felt like restless, they advised you to like walk up and down the hallway, and they like had on the bulletin board they had signage showing like how many laps would be a mile, or half a mile, and some people did that. I did not. I thought I would like lose my mind going up and down the hallway like 60 times. So that was like one thing that I really didn't like about it, that I felt trapped, to where like even the first time, like whenever we were allowed to leave, I felt so free. And I like missed public transit. I like just missed the smell of the air and the loudness of the world. I wrote down, we watched a lot of trash TV. I made a friend who played the piano. I did some readings. We watched a lot of Christmas movies because again, it was like winter time, close to Christmas. So we watched like Christmas movies as a group. And I journaled quite a bit. I will also link up there somewhere. Whenever I look back at these videos, I cringe. But if you're interested in me reading my journal from whenever I was in the psych ward, you can do that. It's still on the internet. I'm debating on whether or not I'm gonna like hide it from y'all. But all right. I initially felt compelled to make this video because like I know whenever I got out of being there, I like went on YouTube and watched all sorts of people talk about their experiences. And so if you are someone like that and looking for someone to talk about their experience, that was my motive for making this video. And it is Mental Health Awareness Month, so for the month of May I will be posting a bit more content that's a lot more vulnerable than I typically am, although I think I am pretty open on the internet, especially about my mental health. So yeah, if you have any comments or questions, you can leave that in the comment section below. I will have some resources to things that helped me and that continue to help me in the description below. And yeah, feel free to follow me on social media. I don't use Twitter that much, but you can always DM me on Instagram if you like. All right, I hope you are doing well throughout this pandemic, and have a great week. Bye.